Good evening and welcome to Moyo the Heart Center, where we offer transformational skills, interviews, webinars, and podcasts for open-hearted people searching for inspirational truth to heal themselves, their families, their communities, and ultimately the world. It has been an absolute honor to have these conversations on our platform. We have dedicated a 5-session series of podcasts to spirit-led race conversations. I can't believe it. It's our last podcast. Tonight we will look at the brow and the crown chakra. The journey up until now has been really extraordinary, and I'm excited to learn more about how these two chakras will support the spirit-led conversation. It is with so much gratitude that I welcome Dr. Makati Mokoena and Ilse Ockles this evening.
Good evening, everybody. There really is a sense of a cycle, isn't there, of where we started right at the beginning of this month and this extraordinary path that we have traveled together this month. And what an auspicious month it's been. So many auspicious events and occasions, way more than what we anticipated when we initially had this little brain spark. Let's honor Human Rights Day with our conversation. Let's schedule our conversation for the month of March, and not realizing how this conversation will in fact be led by spirit, but supported by spirit in the way in which these auspicious days and events sort of shaped, found its place alongside our conversations. So, Makati, do you want to say good evening before I start us off?
Oh, yes, thank you. It feels unreal that we are at the end of our conversations, and a lot has happened. And I hope that all of you that have journeyed with us have felt the impact of these conversations, and not only feel them, but perhaps also practice them, realize them in action in your life. Certainly, it is a journey that I continue to walk, and I'm looking forward to seeing where I get to. But over to you, Ilse, to bring us into the conversations. Yeah.
Thank you. So to bring us in this evening, Makati and I have chosen a poem that came to us when we asked for guidance around how to start this evening. And this poem has got great significance and symbolism for both of us. And we felt that there was a way in which it captured something to do with the transformation process of a journey like this for all of us. But also, it has an echo also of this very auspicious time that we're approaching in the calendar of Easter. We know that the Pesach has been celebrated recently, and this symbolism of crucifixion and resurrection. I don't particularly identify as Christian, but the archetypal symbolism of what has to die in order for something else to be born, to be resurrected. And so we want to share with you, and then Makati will do an invocation for us after I've shared the poem as a starting of this evening. It is called In Impossible Darkness by Kim Rosen. Do you know how the caterpillar turns? Do you remember what happens inside a cocoon? You liquefy. There, in the thick black of your self-spun womb, void as the moon before waxing, you melt. As Christ did for 3 days in the tomb, conceiving in impossible darkness, the sheer inevitability of wings
Sure. And so we take this moment to call in the guidance of the Christ consciousness, the one who lives in all of us, the teacher, the one who has walked before us and comes to us in many forms, the one who may come in the form of our ancestors, of the Jesus Christ, of Muhammad, of the Buddha, and many other teachers that are calling all of humanity to rise as we get embedded in Mother Nature, to rise and hold those two spaces of as above, so below, as below, so above. And to feel the rising of that in us and the deepening of that in us. We call on all our teachers. May we have the ears to listen and to hear, the sight to look again and see, the mouths to speak only when we know that what we are speaking is words of divine sacredness, and our hearts to open, to really open and make manifest all the love that is here for all of us. May we connect with that Christ consciousness in ourselves tonight. May we hear the voices of our ancestors. And may this journey, this path that is ending tonight, never end until we all arrive back home.
Thank you. Yes, may it never end. May we remember the warmth of this strangely virtual space as we continue on our journeys together after this evening. So just a reminder again about contracting. So every time we have had this quick reminder, our very first session, we dedicated almost exclusively to this idea of contracting and how we enter into these conversations. So just a reminder again this evening that we really come to these conversations with humility, because we tread on sacred ground, that we come to these conversations because of grief, because of pain, because of loss. That's what draws us to these conversations. So that is, we come with that reverence for the suffering, that this particular challenge around our racialized beings in the world have brought us. And we also accept these conversations from our Black brothers and sisters as whites, as a gift, because we know that it costs them more to have these conversations. It comes at a greater cost. Often it comes at a greater cost, and often it asks of Black people to touch into places that are incredibly tender and could be very painful. And so we accept that as a gift given to us. And then what I want to add this evening is how we end. So in a lot of the work that I do, we make use of what we call 4 agreements to have courageous conversations about race. And they were identified by an African-American scholar by the name of Glenn Singleton, who did more than, longitudinal studies in American schools around courageous conversations around race. And the 4 agreements, the first one is that we commit to stay engaged. We commit to be present and bring ourselves fully to the conversation. The second one is that we commit to speak our truth, to activate this throat chakra. that we won't be fearful of offending, that we won't be fearful of, that we won't be afraid of the truth, that we trust in its healing powers. The third agreement is that we agree to be uncomfortable, which is a beautiful one. We agree to be uncomfortable. If we don't, we have to develop our capacity to sit with the discomfort. So we have to become more comfortable with discomfort. And anyone who's done any meditation or any mindfulness practices will tell you that is a lifelong journey, how to sit and become comfortable, create a gentle space around your discomfort in which something else becomes possible. But the last agreement is the one that's particularly relevant for us this evening. And that one is that we expect and we accept non-closure. So we expect and we accept with gratitude and with humility that there is not closure. Even after 5 intense conversations, there is no closure, that we continue to walk this path together. So that is just a little reminder of how we enter in, and then also how we then this evening move outside, move beyond this 5 series conversation. Magati, you're going to connect in with our homework and with what's been happening around us this past week.
I'm very much loving that. I'm loving particularly that last one, because it does speak of the cycles, the rhythm of nature, which these conversations have pretty much been aligned to cycles that have been happening around us, to events that have been happening around us. And there's been a sort of a dancing with, a concerting of these conversations with Human Rights Month, with the beginning of autumn in South Africa, well, in the Southern Hemisphere certainly, which is that moment when we turn towards the dark, when we prepare ourselves to go inward, to go into a space perhaps of retreat, or a space of hibernation, a space of inwardness, in order to go into deep contemplation and allowing the layers that no longer serve to die off, to be brushed off, to be disrobed of those layers that no longer work. And to sit in that melting, that poem, sure, to sit in that unformed space, in that liminal space, for a moment that can feel like a whole long time. But sitting in that space for even a moment can be that space, can be that time when we allow grace to act on us, and to bring to us the outer layer that we need. And perhaps the outer layer contains the wings that we are adorned with. But that sinking, going underground with the dark goddess, with those moments where we have no signposts. Those are the moments that we are going into as we approach winter. And if we could use those times, if we could use the time of winter to really think about, contemplate, what is it that I need to change my mind about? And I'm already bringing us to the third chakra, to the fifth chakra. Fifth? Is it the fifth? It's the sixth chakra. The third eye, which of course we're going to be talking about and reflecting on, and seeing the significance of that together with the seventh chakra. But we've also had the full moon, the super moon, just 2 nights ago. So this is very much auspicious time. It is big, big time. And I am absolutely somebody who turns events into ceremony. So whatever nature gives us, I honor it, and I find ways to allow the significance of whatever is happening around me to enter into me, and for me to see what is it that I can do in order to get in sync with what nature is offering us. Yeah. So so perhaps you can bring us into the conversation around this chapter.
Yeah, so I want, if I may, because I was so excited when I found this, just for a moment, just stop with at the place of the full moon, because this full moon was in the sign of Libra. And whilst I'm not an astrologer at all, I do know, I just have a dangerous amount of knowledge. So any proper astrologer will please just bear with me. But the Libra, the sign of Libra, of course, are the scales. And I just personally, for me, it was such a beautiful synchronicity that we come to the end of this conversation that has really been about justice. And that we come to the end of it on this kind of super full moon in Libra with the scales of justice. And I found this from a very unreliable source, I must say, but I'm going to just share it because it resonated so much with me. It says, under a Libra full moon, we can recognize what injustice has cost us, both collectively and individually. Our understanding of beauty is narrowed in a world that doesn't recognize the sacredness of all people. Under a Libra full moon, we can unburden our grief on the big silver scale and then look to the other side and ask, what balances this? How have I balanced this? What has anchored me to the land of the living? What can I praise? What can I praise? And to me, that was just such a treasure that I found as I prepared myself for this evening's conversation, where the 7 chakra points are superimposed really on the scales of justice. And that is the essence of what it is that we've been working with. So that takes us then into our third eye, our 6th chakra. We haven't spoken much about the homework. Do we want to say something about that before we move on? Or are we just moving right along?
I think we're moving. We're moving.
I'm
looking at the time.
So the pineal gland, of course, is apparently the thing that sits there in the vicinity of this chakra, and I love the 6th chakra. For me, it represents mind. It represents the quality of our mind. And we spoke when we were preparing a little bit, we spoke about how there's this complete link between the 7th chakra, the crown chakra, and then the mind chakra, because the mind is the space that is the energy center from which whatever intuition we receive, whatever vision we have, whatever profound guidance we get, whatever prompting we get from that collective unconscious, from the divine, from the transpersonal divine collective place, that cosmic consciousness, has to be received, and it has to be processed, and it has to be articulated, and it has to be offered to the world. And that can only happen through a quality of mind, a clarity of mind, a rigor of mind. And so for me, I think Caroline May says that the third eye is where, she says, where visionary energy meets mind. And for me, the question is, as somebody coming to this conversation as a racialized white, is so much, what is the quality of our minds? How rigorous are our minds? How much of a critical consciousness
have we cultivated with our minds? Do we look at society and do we ask the critical questions all the time? And do we have a vision against which we measure or against which we inquire into the situation that surrounds us in the world? And I think I shared with you, Makati, that, you know, as somebody who also practiced as a lawyer in the earlier parts of my career, somebody who's been a committed justice practitioner, for me, it is such a beautiful thing that in this country in particular, we have this constitution, the Constitution of South Africa. To me, it's a sacred covenant. It is not just a piece of legislation. And it contains the vision. It is articulated, it is written down, it is made manifest in that sense, that it's not just inspiration, it has actually been formed and shaped into the kind of society that we would want, that we would like to live in. And so for me, that is in a way the challenge is to my fellow whites is, what vision do you have in your mind? What vision are you holding for this country of ours and for the world? And do you hold it? Do you hold it with rigor? Do you hold it passionately and relentlessly? And have you developed that quality of mind to evaluate, to inquire, to critique society on a daily basis in our everyday lives against this vision? That's what was living inside me around this particular chakra.
Yeah. Gosh.
And what are you going to share with us?
Well, the invitation that I want to call the provocation, you know, what you've just uttered feels like a shaking up, like a rousing out of the slumber of you know, the pleasure that privilege gives. Wake up and examine it, and look at on the other side, how is this balance being maintained? At what cost is this balance, the scale of justice? What is it that it is holding in balance? And is that balance one that is generative? Does it work? Yeah. And what I want to share from my point is part of what this chakra brings for me as one who is racialized Black, is the role that imagination plays, because that's one of the factors that it governs, and that imagination for me, it is a startlingly powerful tool for examining every little story that we have been told about who we should be, and imagining and using imagination as an audacious sacred act to imagine ourselves participating as an identity of divinity, as an aspect of identity of divinity, which is a part that has been constantly excised out of us. You are not part of, you are not reflecting of divinity. Your practices are incorrect, or they are devilish, or they are satanic, or they are barbaric or uncivilized. All of those stories which persist in some ways up to today, where we have forgotten who we really are. We have so much held on to this cloak of identity called this Black skin, and translating the Black skin's experience into my own true experience, or a reflection of my true experience, but it isn't that. And so for me, the invitation that this third eye is giving me is Makati, look and look again. Turn this vision inward, and you will encounter what you may not expect, what you have not expected before. And when you do that, when you encounter that divinity within, reclaim that, because that's who you have always been. That is who this journey through life has been about. It has been about a yearning for connecting with something much bigger than myself. And that's really been my own personal journey. This is why I call myself a pilgrim, is walking a long, long journey of trying to find a home in a world that has not welcomed me. But it is a home beyond the world that has not welcomed me, but through this world that has not welcomed me. So it is a big gift. It is a big invitation that that this is bringing. This third eye is bringing. And I think it's an invitation that I would like to utter to other Black people who haven't taken that journey of reclaiming the sacred self, reclaiming the self as a sacred aspect of divinity, and knowing that we can step fully into that. And perhaps when we step fully into that, perhaps that disturbs these scales, and they can be recalibrated into real stability, rather than an imposed false stability where there is the burden of holding what is not working and the privilege of holding all the goodness. Yeah.
Sure. I really, I love that so much. I love that so much. I think I'm reminded of somebody who said, and I have a beloved friend who has since passed on, and I'm wondering if his energy is with us this evening, that this is coming into my consciousness, who used to say that, you know, our biggest crisis that we have is a crisis of imagination. You know, that is the biggest crisis that we have, that we can't actually truly imagine a world beyond this one differently. I'm not talking about the ultimate home that we are all going back to. I'm talking about this home, this finite, fragile planet that we're on, but that we don't have sufficient imagination to be able to really imagine it in it differently, and that is our biggest crisis.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I think that that lack of that inability to imagine something different, is precisely what sustains the systems, the structures that keep our divisions and the racism and the exclusions in place, because we ourselves cannot imagine anything else. And so we live in support of the very structures that ultimately are not for us. And when we can imagine something else, and it's difficult, I acknowledge that it's incredibly difficult. And I constantly am in criticism of the policies that govern societies and countries, and just they are so out of, they're inhumane. Actually, there is a sense of not honoring humanity and life and nature. But thinking about, well, what other system can you propose, Makati? I have to also say, I don't know. But perhaps we can find other ways. We can both dream other ways. And perhaps when we put our minds together, we can dream something else together. and trusting that maybe two minds are better than one, are more powerful than one. But I think that this is it's a big invitation to all of us to, as we reject these systems, these structures that are keeping us separate and enslaved, that we can also get together and bring to life by imagination something else, and trust that something else is possible.
And I love that you brought in the word dream there, because when we were talking about, when we were doing our prep conversation, we were just, remember I made reference to Martin Luther King and to his "I have a dream" speech. And I was thinking, also by way of invitation to our friends who are with us in this conversation, like, what is your dream? He had a dream. He died before that dream was realized, but it was such a powerful dream. His sort of third eye was so powerful that dream of his influenced an entire nation. It mobilized an entire movement. What is your dream? What are you dreaming about? Where are you putting your focus and your energy and your consciousness? Because it's that mobilizing power of the third eye. That is where manifestation happens. But you manifest what you imagining, what your dream is, what your vision is. And so we need to maybe then be still to receive that vision, to get clear for ourselves about what we want our lives to be in service of, and then work more skillfully and more rigorously with mind and with imagination as one aspect of mind. So it's interesting, these different aspects of mind that is actually presenting itself. Because, Mahati, I was thinking, it's been a month, it's been 5 weeks, and I was thinking about my fellow whites. And I was wondering, other than these conversations on Tuesday evenings, how much of a white bubble are our lives? Like, how many of us who are white and who are racialized white has been able to live our lives this month without any major disruption, without necessarily any ruptures or any disruptions, and come to these conversations on Tuesday evenings and spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half, really thinking about these issues and really engaging with these issues, and then have the privilege to then just retreat into the status quo, as you were saying, into that situation that is structurally this tight tectonic between the way our societies are structured, between capitalism and patriarchy and racism and all these different ways in which we are, as you said, enslaved, all of us, black and white, enslaved in these structures. Yeah, I'm rambling a bit there.
No, I don't think it's rambling at all. I'm thinking that it starts in the mind. It starts exactly what you were referring to, in the quality of the thoughts and the mind, and how we use our minds. I know that sometimes I get overwhelmed when I look at what's happening around me, and it's an overwhelm that can be debilitating. And I think then that the invitation of this third eye is, remember that change happens in that mind. And when the change happens in your thinking and in how you see the world, and you bring your intention, you marry your intention with that change, then perhaps grace can act on and assist and provide instances where you can practice that changed mind. And maybe sometimes we don't see that we are being challenged, we're being offered opportunities when grace acts upon us, but then we get all sullen and we get angry and we get pissed off. Oh, these people are striking again and they're burning tires in the roads, and they're without recognizing that, remember that you changed your mind. Now you have to show how you enact your changed mind. And so every experience that can be felt as a challenge, perhaps when we change our minds, perhaps we can recognize that, this is an opportunity for me actually to make manifest what I have changed inside of myself. Certainly, that's the invitation to myself, because what happens in the mind is one thing. It has to be translated into action in order for it to take root. Yeah.
If I can use that as a cue, because there was one concept that I felt we couldn't come to the end of this conversation without me finding a little place to insert this concept, because it is so critical, I think. And we've spoken about victims, and we've spoken about perpetrators, and we've spoken about bystanders. But there's a fourth category that's come out of all that research of the Holocaust, and it's called upstanders. To be an upstander. And I think that what we're talking about is that role. What you're saying is acting then in a way that is in accordance with this new vision, this new dream, means that you become an upstander. It means that you speak and do and behave. Your behavior follows that. And so you then bring that truth or a degree of agency where you go. We are not doomed to either be victims, perpetrators, or bystanders. There is, in fact, a way in which we can stand up for what we believe in, and for who we are, and for the vision, and stand for the vision, the dream that we have. Be the change, as Mahatma Gandhi said. So I'm glad we had an opportunity to just slip that fourth role into our conversation. Yeah,
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I want to say a last thing about the third eye for me. It is that once that vision is clarified, that it becomes the lens through which I look at the world and I experience the world and I see the world. And of course, we know that we see the world the way we are. And so the more clarity I have of who I am, perhaps the more with love I can behold the world.
That's beautiful. And the last thing I'm going to throw in there is something that came across Facebook this week that I loved so much, which was a quote of Elie Wiesels, who was, I don't know if I'm saying that name correctly, but who was a Holocaust survivor, very famous person also, who spoke about the atrocities and evils there. And I think he got the Nobel Peace Prize at some point, and he said, always take sides. I love that, because it's so counterintuitive, isn't it? It's so counterintuitive, because we're always supposed to be, objective and, see all sides and whatever. And he says, no, always take sides, always take sides. Because if you don't take sides, it means you are siding with the oppressor in any given situation. If you are not taking a side, you are assigned a side. And so for me, that is also, that's got something to do with that vision that you have, and that quality of mind, that discernment, that discerning, and then to actually take sides, Yeah.
That is beautiful. Thank you.
Always take sides.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, so that takes us then to this beautiful crown chakra, this beautiful, I always sort of imagine it as this beautiful container, this beautiful, almost like the thousand petaled lotus that its name is. But this beautiful kind of container that receives. Tell us about your feelings around this beautiful crown chakra.
Oh, I love your image of this container, this vessel that receives. And it speaks of that openness and opening to allow to come in. And I'm imagining like from the Christ grid, and all this energy traveling all the way down into Mother Earth, into the grid of the earth, and just this movement, this up and down movement that can happen, that is possible to happen through all of us, and that aligns us. And my feeling, I mean, the crown chakra is a I think it's, whew, it really is that reminder of our connection, of our identity as aspects of divinity, of our oneness, of the transpersonal, the non-ordinary, that which is not easy to define, the ineffable, really. And I had a big experience a couple of years ago of realizing that which does not make sense. A couple of years ago, I had traveled to Zanzibar and had gone to Stone Town. And whilst there, I had, we went on a tour. One of the guides took us around the tour of the place where Africans were stolen from Zanzibar and sold off as slaves. And at the end of it, there's a church that is built there. And I think, I don't know, it doesn't matter what kind of church it is, but I ended up there. And whilst I was in that church, I just started weeping and I couldn't stop crying. I just was completely overwhelmed, completely. And I cried and cried and cried. And in the midst of my tears, I heard a voice distinctly say to me, Makati, you are crying right now. But ask yourself, who is it that you are crying for? Is it for the Black Africans who were sold into slavery and who had to bear unmeasurable atrocities even before they got sold off? Or is it for the white slave merchants? And the voice said to me, be clear, because in that lifetime, you have no idea what body you were wearing. You may very well have been wearing the body of a white slave merchant or one of the African slaves. Therefore, offer compassion to both. Offer compassion to both. And of course, I cried even more. And in my lifetime, that reality, that invitation keeps coming up over and over and over again. Offer compassion to both, because both of you, if one of you is not awoken, that none of you wakes up. If one of you wakes up, then all of you are awoken, this is the utterance of Ubuntu. It is saying we are one. That interdependence keeps coming back. We are one. And the experiences that I've had in life keep showing me this oneness over and over and over again. And it goes beyond, it happens through the body, but it goes beyond our physical identities. But we have to work through these physical identities in order to touch that. And that's my experience of the crown chakra as far as racialized identities is concerned, the concept, the idea, the construct. Yeah.
Oh, that is, yeah, that is, that feels to me like it has that pure quality of the crown chakra, you know, that it is so beyond the binaries, the polarities, the judgment. It is so far beyond all of that. And it brings to mind for me the concept, this bodhisattva concept, you know, this concept of bodhisattva, that you know, beings that volunteer to continue to incarnate and continue to, you know, at some level are willing to kind of take on some kind of suffering, and because of this vow that until the last one enters, until the last one goes through the gate, you know, I will come back. I will come back to help. I will come back to help until the last one goes through the gate. And in that way, we absolutely need one another. We need one another to heal and do the work that we need to do that will not be possible without each other. Without each other, that work is not possible. And so we are each other's angels. We are each other's teachers. We are each other's true family, true sisters and brothers, willing to come into this life, assuming these different racialized identities, being born into these different conditions and circumstances, into either wealth or poverty, into a different class construct, into different countries, and in our context, into this incredibly complex country with its incredibly complex history of so much. It's like almost like it's a laboratory. It's almost like it's a kind of a case study of evolution of consciousness and of the movements of peoples and of the, you know, the First Nations and the extermination of the First Nations, and then the so-called Bantu people, and then, you know, the colonists, and then just the whole story, the whole drama of it. And who, as you say, who knows which lives we've led and which roles we've played.
Sorry.
Yes, no, you go ahead.
When you mentioned the bodhisattva, and then of course I thought of the thousand petals of the lotus, and with the bodhisattva, the vow also is that there are 1,000 perspectives. That's why that lotus has 1,000 petals, is that each of those petals represents a particular perspective. And so the invitation for me is, having had that particular experience, is Makati, you cannot settle on the first perspective. Look again, look again, look again, look again. Whether it's to me, what do I believe about myself? What do I believe about Black people? What do I believe about white people? What do I believe about whatever it is? What is my experience? Not only belief, but what are my experiences? What are other people's, what are white people's experiences? Look again, look again, keep looking. There are 1,000 perspectives to be taken into account. And so when you asked last time, why is it that Black people forgive so easily? And for me, it is that reminder for all of us that we have capacity to look again. We all have access. We can access these 1,000 perspectives. And what is the invitation is to let go of the perspective that we hold so dear because of fear, because of what we benefit from holding those particular perspectives. But we have to be courageous enough to let go of those perspectives in order to start appreciating the other 1,000. And perhaps when we have, observed all the 1,000, perhaps we can say, okay, now I understand, or I really don't understand. But it is an invitation to pause and look again.
Absolutely, and it's the pausing and it's the looking again, and then of course it's this question. I mean, I seem to be channeling all my Jewish friends this evening, but there's this beautiful Jewish concept. I think it's tikkun olam. I think that's, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's got to do with the healing of the world, the kind of the mending of the world, the mending and the healing of the world. And the question, of course, for us is, what is your particular curriculum? What is your particular curriculum? What is your particular contribution? Where on this incredible garment of our common humanity, where is the bit that you have to mend? And what is the bit that you have to do? Without your bit, that beautiful garment will remain with holes. So what is your work? So we have been born into these racialized bodies, racialized identities, into these cultures, into these constructs, in order to do our bit to heal that garment. And so what is your particular task? And I think one of the things that we've realized over these 5 weeks is that very often the path is very different if you grew up white or if you grew up Black. The path is very different. And this is whilst recognizing our common humanity, the fact that we are aspects of the divine, that we experience life at an archetypal level, at a transpersonal level. We go through all the same emotions and all the same rituals, and we hold all the same things dear to a large extent. But our experiences, our racialized experiences, have been so different that the worst thing you can do is say, I see no color. I am beyond race. I am beyond race. To me, this is the rainbow nation of God. People are just people. That is where you, in my sort of opinion, in my humble opinion, that is where you opting out of the work that you need to do, because we have been bequeathed a very unequal world, and a world with incredible complexity, and we all have work to do around that. What is your contribution to that work?
What do you think is your contribution, Ilse, if I can ask?
Well, I think I'm going to use that question to tell my goddess story, my goddess Mart story, if I may. Because I think this is, for me, part of my calling, is this place where justice and spirituality sort of meet. That I think that feels like a place for me to do some of my work. So those of you who've been following us from the beginning of this conversation might recall that very early on in the series, I made mention when we spoke about the chakra system, and we said that it has both its Indian and Sanskrit roots, but it also has its Egyptian and African roots. And I spoke about how there's something about the Egyptian heritage, lineage, that feels very powerful to me. It is our African kind of lineage. And in the early days, after I was working as a human rights lawyer, and I got very, very burnt out, because whilst I was working in that human rights paradigm, there kept on being this question of, why this injustice, why this pain? And people that would end up in my office would say, why did this happen to me? And this is so unfair. And so wrestling with this idea of unfairness and injustice. And so I really, it really cracked my heart open, that work, those first 10 years of my professional life as a human rights lawyer, where I spent a lot of time in townships, in prisons, in all kinds of places. And then at some point, I came across this papyrus image. It actually came from a book called Dancing in the Flames by a feminist Jungian. And it was this image, a papyrus image from the Book of the Dead in Egypt. And it was a story about the goddess of justice in Egyptian mythology. And her name is Maat, and I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. But there's this beautiful story, and I've actually got an image here, which I'm going to hold up and see if you can actually see it. So the goddess of justice, Maat, has a headdress of ostrich feathers, and those feathers are perfect because they're all perfect symmetry. And so when you come to the end of your life in Egyptian mythology and you meet the goddess, and you face the scales, then on the one scale, your heart will be placed on the one scale, and on the other scale will be one feather from the headdress of the goddess Maat. And in this picture, you will see that below, you will see the 7 chakra points on that scale of justice. And in the lower chakras, you will see a kind of a crocodile type creature. And sitting on top of the scales, you will see an eagle type creature. And in Egyptian mythology, if you have lived your life in a way where you were so focused on your lower chakras, where you were so focused on physical security, wealth, all the issues that we spoke about in the lower chakras, the crocodile will come, your heart will sink, and the crocodile will come and eat your heart and swim off with it, go off with it, and you will have to repeat your incarnation. If, on the other hand, you lived such a disembodied life, you were so spiritual your whole life, you were so only in your heart and in your kind of upper chakras, that you did not recognize how out of balance things were in the material, physical world that we live in, then that eagle, your heart will lift. It'll be lighter than the feather of Maat. And that eagle will come and grab your heart and fly off with it. So what we need is our hearts to be in balance with that beautiful feather of the goddess of Maat, which means that it asks of us to align, to work with those 7 energy points, to bring consciousness and balance and alignment to our 7 chakra points. And for me, out of that came a whole nother universe of work around working with the theme of justice, but in the context of spirituality. And that has been a blessing for me. That has been a blessing for me. Because I think I have shared that my ancestry, my recent ancestry, come from a line of perpetrators, of colonists and perpetrators and architects of apartheid. And so there's a lot of work that has had to happen. Makgati, and for you, your last kind of contribution that you would like to offer, your path here. What is your path here?
My path here. I was brushing my teeth earlier on, and I was thinking about what's my path here. I mean, I've known it, but then the word journeyman came into mind. I don't even know. I didn't look up what journeyman. So I asked, well, what is that? And the response was, you help people die. You help people cross over. So, and I then have made sense of it that I help people die to that which is not true of who they are, so that they can live and wake up to who they really are. And that in this lifetime, I have taken on this body as one of the 1,000 petals to experience life in this body and bring, take in the pain, transmute it, and give it out, and assist with that healing journey for all of us, until all of us have walked through that gate.
Oh, what a privilege it's been to be in this virtual space with you these past month. What a gift it's been to the both of us. So Cindy, thank you so much for taking the initiative and for having that yearning. Another quote that I love by novelist George Eliot is that justice is not outside of us as a fact. It is inside of us as a yearning. I love that. And you, Cindy, had the yearning for these conversations. You had the yearning for it, and you manifested it. So thank you so much.
And thank you all. I'm going to open up there haven't been any questions as yet, but has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask the panelists? And while we're waiting for that, I just think I would like to really express Moyo, our team's absolute gratitude for this transformational, extraordinary journey. There doesn't go a day doesn't pass where we don't talk about these conversations, whether I'm talking to my colleagues at the school, but it's really brought up some really rich conversations. And that's where it starts, is that people are talking, people are feeling uncomfortable. And I'm talking about, white people, middle-class people who are now going, that's uncomfortable. So this journey that you have taken us on has been a gift, an absolute gift to our listeners. I know these podcasts are going to be around for a period of time. And I'm really, I really feel so much gratitude for that. And I know that you have spent a lot of your time going through this and putting it in a, for me, racism was often political because of the binary that we hold it in. That binary was so stuck in my mind of how do I blend the two? How do I bring my spirituality in? And today, just talking about the crown and allowing that energy to come in. And I just want to point out that, offer compassion to both. And for me, that was really something today that has really, it meet it equally with compassion for both. So what is our work now?
We did actually think of a parting gift. And the parting gift is the question that Ilse and I asked one another. What is the purpose that you have agreed to live out in this lifetime? What is it that made you pick the body that you picked, with every bit of complexity attached to it? So in your family, in your lineage, your race, your social context, what is it that you agreed to bring? Can you allow yourself to remember that? And in what way can you make that real? Can you manifest that in the world as your sacred purpose? That's our homework. That's our parting gift.
And I think one of our guests said, let's all be accountable for continuing the conversations. And I invite you all to share what you have learned, because that's how we get the knock-on effect, is by sharing and sharing and sharing what we have learned. And I think tonight, one of the key words that keeps coming out is be the change. Just be the change. Just go out there and be it, and not talk about it too much either. It's about the action. It's about having the vision and then bringing it down. So the good news is that Ilse and Makati are going to be with us on Earth Day. And I'm going to just let them talk to you a little bit about that, which is on the 22nd of April.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you to Josh and to Cindy for making another very beautiful banner. We were inspired by the last week's heart chakra and by Makati's beautiful lotus flower lily that she has there next to her, that she has her candle in. But we asked Josh, we wanted the mud as well. We wanted the whole ecosystem to be there on the picture, because it is, of course, the flowering is only one aspect. But we are so excited. We're so happy that we don't have to say goodbye to you, and that we don't have to say goodbye to each other. And so we're inviting you, very special invitation, to join us on Thursday evening, the 22nd. So Thursdays, as you know, is Moyo Heart Center's regular Thursday evening event. And so on Thursday evening, the 22nd of April, that particular Thursday happens to be International Earth Day. And so Makati and I are having an Earth Day conversation. We've titled it Restoring Our Earth, Restoring Ourselves. The international theme for Earth Day is Restoring Our Earth. And so we added the restoring ourselves, restoring our earth, restoring ourselves, and we will bring our different perspectives to that conversation. So if you think maybe I'm not a particularly environmentalist, you guys have already pushed me far enough now with all these race conversations. Oh, gosh, sorry. We're not going to bring you're not going to turn me into an eco warrior, but we are inviting you to come and have a sacred conversation about our interrelationship with this fragile planet that we're on and what it's asking of each of us. And we each bring our different perspectives and the different paths that we have walked around that theme. So I took the Eco Sattva vows 2 years or so ago, which is linked to Joanna Macy's the work that reconnects. And Makati has been practicing her ceremonial and indigenous practices. And so we bring our different perspectives, and we hope to see all of you on Thursday, the 22nd of April. Makati, what would you like to add?
Just not much, but perhaps a reminder that, an invitation that if you're not particularly somebody who feels connected to nature that much, that perhaps this can be that opportunity to drop into that space of you that is part of nature, and let's explore how can you deepen that relationship, and remember that We are on sacred land. Mother Earth is a sacred gift to all of us, and our relationship to her matters. And our relationship with one another is an extension of our relationship to Mother Earth. So all of that will be contained within that vessel. Look how I'm going round. Yeah, that globe of that holds our conversation, that'll host our conversation and exploration. That's all. That's it. That's what I would like to add.
Makati and Ilse, we have had such a gift, and we have so much gratitude for all the wisdom, the knowledge that you have shared with us over the last 5 weeks. Thank you so much.